So, it's time to shoot, stab, get bossed around, and generally get ourselves into a state. Let's learn some more Infinity. Welcome to Learn to Play Infinity N5 from the Infinity Institute from the Dice Gods. My name is Hydra, and today we are filling in some gaps. It's going to be time to look at different weaponry, ammunition, lieutenants, one of the cornerstones of any good force, close combat, and some of the states that you can get yourself in. This is kind of filling in some of the gaps of bits that we've missed in previous videos through design, really, so that you didn't get too massively overwhelmed and swamped in stuff. But hopefully by this point, you should be playing the game well. You should have a good idea of the core mechanics and the processes involved. So it's really time to start filling in those gaps and giving you even more toys to chuck at each other across the board. Before we do that, thank you as ever to channel members and Patreons, including Sean Colburn, Oldman Rogers, Chaos Discordia, Runic Rolf, Chris Sexton, Riker6, which is how I'm saying your name, and Kaz, the incredibly helpful individual who helped me with a polite nudge to sort out the Discord channel. That's right, members get a Discord channel as well, aren't they lucky? If you want to support what we're doing here and all the stuff that is yet to come from the Infinity Institute, then please do consider signing up. Less than a cup of coffee helps a lot, and this video will be longer for members. But with all that said, let's get into what you're really here for, which is all the good stuff that helps you do more damage to the enemy. Let's get into it. Okay then folks, let's fill in those gaps. We are going to look at a lot today, so as ever, snacks, drinks, get comfy, here we go. We have got weapons, ammunition, templates, equipment. We're not going to do all the equipment, we're going to cherry pick some of that, hence common equipment. Close combat, martial arts, other CC skills, which is very important, different types of order, because they're not all the same. Lieutenants, I'm British, English is lieutenant, sorry American friends, and states, which again we're going to do some of, not all of, because there are loads, and I don't want to be here all year. To an extent, we're going to cover off some of the most important ones for things like equipment and states. The rest are in the rulebook, and to be honest with you, when we've covered a few more bits and pieces with this video and with the next, you should feel comfortable and confident enough to read those, make sense of them, and be able to apply them yourself. But we shall see. And as ever, questions in the comments if not. So, weapons. There is more to life than just combi rifles. You may not believe it, but it is true. So, we've got all the things you'd expect in a war game. Shotguns, sniper rifles, missile launchers, rocket launchers, rail guns. It's all here. It's fantastic. And they are... Some of these weapons are variations on a theme. So if we look at a Spitfire and look at a Red Fury side by side, they have the same range bands, they have the same burst, they have a different potential of survival. Technically the Red Fury hits softer, but the Red Fury does have an ammunition type. So some weapons you'll look at and you'll think, oh hang on, this is this weapon, but with this. And it's one of the joys of Infinity. When you have learnt your weapons for a faction, those weapons will be the same in other factions, and you'll find common denominators as well, common themes like the Spitfire and the Red Fury here. It does mean that the more experience you get, the easier the game becomes, because if you've seen one missile launcher, you've seen them all. If you've seen one rocket launcher, you've seen them all. If you've seen a Panzerfaust, it's a Panzerfaust. These things are standardised, which makes the game that little bit more accessible and a little bit easier to learn. There are key different types of weapons, however. They include standard, which you've been using combis, shotguns and HMGs and Spitfires, close combat weapons, technical weapons, and thrown deployable weapons. Predominantly your main differences there are your range bands, your burst, your damage, and your ammo. It's kind of the differentiator between those things, although technical is a bit of a weird and wonderful one, and we will get to that in a second. So, standard weapons, as you expect, shotguns, sniper rifles, missile launchers, pistols, combis, all this kind of thing. They can fire different types of ammunition. So you will find even some, so like we just spoke about a second ago, a Red Fury is a Spitfire, a weaker Spitfire, but with shock ammunition. Some offer a multi option, which gives them different types of ammo that you can choose from when you fire that weapon. So when you're declaring your BS attack, you put in, I want to use this ammo type. So for example, you might find that it has AP, which is armor piercing, which is good for taking down heavily armored targets, and shock. So you can choose to use shock, which ignores the unconscious state. It takes things straight to dead so they can't be doctored back to life. Or you crack the armor open. When you take that shot, you choose which one you use, and it gives the weapon a bit more flexibility, a bit more utility than it would otherwise have. And there are disposable weapons, things like the aforementioned Panzerfaust, which when you have fired it twice, it goes in the bin. So standard weapons covers most of what you'll see in the game, aside from close combat weapons, which is all the unpleasantness of stabby, stabby, pokey, pokey up close. There are ammunition types in here. So there are, again, armor piercing, and there are things that just glue you in place and all this kind of stuff. Then we have technical weapons. These tend to put you in a particular state. So we spoke about the isolated state previously, which is where your trooper is knocked out of their combat group, put into a combat group on their own. They can't use other people's orders. They can't use, other people can't use their order. There's all kinds of unpleasantness to isolated. There are weapons called jammers which put you into that state. They don't take a wound off. They don't do any damage to you other than knocking you clean out of your combat group. So there are technical weapons in this, electromagnetic weapons, adhesive weapons that glue you to the floor, stun weapons, all this kind of stuff. Then we have thrown deployable weapons, so that's mines, which you've seen before. It's also to an extent repeaters. They are not technically a weapon, but they do the deployable. Then we have crazy koalas and stuff like that. So let's look a little bit closer at those, because there's a little bit of variety in there. Throwing weapons, grenades, and drop bears, which is a thrown mine. They come in a variety of different flavours, and you complete the BS attack using the PH stat. So you use your physique to throw a grenade. Not rocket science, but important to note. There tends to be much shorter range a normal grenade, a normal thrown grenade, than a combi rifle or even a grenade launcher, which is an option inside the game. But if you're actually just tossing a grenade, you're throwing it out there, PH stat. Mines and deployables, they are deployed with the place deployable common skill. This is another skill that you can use. And you place them in base-to-base contact with your trooper. Mines go down as a camo marker with a -3 mod, so effectively -3 mimetism to discover them. And these are one of the options. Mines are one of the options that is limited. So you tend to get 3 mines on a trooper. If you're doing a deployable, it's often 2, I think, from memory. How often I use deployable repeaters, but you place them down in base to base. There's no roll needed. Hopefully your troops are bright enough to place something at their own feet, not tread on it, and make it live. The game assumes they are. If, however, you're putting down a weapon like a mine in the zone of control of an enemy camo marker, you have to complete what's called an intuitive attack, which is a modified whip check. So you can't just go see it like an enemy camo marker and go and box it in with mines. That's not one of the options. You have to make an intuitive attack, which is a long skill, and it's negative modifiers, and it's all unpleasant. But if there's nothing that you can see inside of your zone of control, you can just throw out mines like they're going out of fashion. Just put them anywhere you want. Perimeter weapons, these are deployed again with the place deployable common skill, but they go into the zone of control of the deploying trooper. Now that includes turrets, I think, still. It shouldn't, but it does. But crazy koalas is the big one. So you'll find these little bundles of fluff and happiness on things like Morans, the Oyore tag, and you spend the skill, and this little guy runs out 8 inches, and he sits there. Great thing about this guy is if anyone enters his zone of control, he doesn't have to see them, he just charges at them and explodes. Crazy koalas are filth, they're absolutely horrific, and I love them for it. So perimeter weapons, you can drop them in your zone of control, and it makes it a lot more, because if you're putting a mine down, you need to do it base to base. If you want to put it somewhere that's slightly in harm's way, you run the risk of getting shot in the face for the privilege of putting your mine down. With a perimeter weapon, you can hang back that a little bit further and go, and up they go upfield and get the job done. So There are a few perimeter weapons like that in the game. I think Mad Traps is another one, but that's a glue version of the Crazy Koala. Stuff like that. And there's a Parrot as well, Wild Parrot. I can't remember. I think that's EM. I never use them. It's an O12 thing, and I haven't played O12 in a long time. So, but there are a few options that do that. Let's talk about ammo types, because there are many, and it's a bit weird. It's one of the few weird things in M5. There are certain things that are clearly ammunition, which are no longer ammunition, but definitely feel like ammunition, but they're not ammunition anymore. Actually, one thing we're not going to talk about in here is, for example, flamethrowers. They used to be burning or flame ammunition, I can't remember what it was, and that used to have effects, but that's no longer a thing. It's still, setting fire to somebody still does the same thing, but it's not an ammo type. So occasionally you'll find these features of Infinity that you look at and think, really? Okay, good. So, ammo types, what are they? Different weapons do different things. They're there to do different jobs, and therefore they have different ammo. There are presently, and you can't see the massive quotation marks that I'm making here, 12 different ammo types in the game. There are more, but we're saying there's 12. Some weapons have a choice of ammunition, as we talked about. So the multi-weapons, you can fire this or you can fire that. Some even have a combination. So the missile launcher you see at the bottom of the screen there, I'm going to get told that's a rocket launcher later. I know that. You know that. Moving on. A missile launcher can fire explosive ammunition, or it can fire explosive plus armor-piercing ammunition. So you can do combined ammunition types. Other weapons have an attribute, as I say, which feels like an ammo type, but isn't technically classified as such. Most ammo crits cause an additional save with the same features as the normal ammo. So with armor piercing, as we're going to discuss in a second, that halves the armor of the weapon that you shoot. The trooper that you shoot. So if they've got armor 6, it halves it down to 3. If you crit, they have to make another save at that half armor. The exception to this is T2, because a normal hit from T2 causes 2 wounds. So you just fail 1 save and you lose 2 wounds, which is horrific. A crit, you have to split out from any saves that they make, and that extra crit will only do 1 wound if they fail the save. It's one of the nuances, one of the weird exceptions. So, ammo types. We start at the top with normal, which if you fail a save, you get 1 save per hit. With normal ammunition, it's targets against your arm, and you lose 1 vita or structure for every failed save. Breaker, same, but targets BTS. This one's really useful because you'll find that certain heavy infantry have great armor but rubbish BTS, so you can use Breaker to crack open those less technically secured and reinforced units. Armor piercing, AP, it halves whatever your weapon is damaging. So if you had certain hacking attacks, for example, have AP ammunition, so they will halve the BTS, so the biotechnical shield of the target, making it less likely to make the save. So something with 6 armor hit by armor piercing would only get 3 armor when making a save. Again, 1 save per and 1 vita or structure lost per. Double action, DA, causes 2 saves for each hit and the loss of 1 vita or structure per failure. So this is quite useful. You'll sometimes find this in multi-weapons, like snipers and stuff like that. You mostly use this in ARO because you get only 1 shot of the double action, but if you land it, they're making 2 saves, they're more likely to fail. Eclipse ammunition, it's not something you fire at someone and you fire it at the ground, and it makes a big round template of infinite height which blocks line of fire, including for MSV, which you'll see why that's important in a minute. Creates a 0 visibility zone. EM, electromagnetic, you make 2 saves per hit, half their BTS, so this is targeting that BTS side of things, and if the target fails their save, they enter the isolated state. Also, if they're a tag, a heavy infantry, a remote, or a vehicle, they get the immobilized B state. We'll talk about immobilized in a second. Explosive, or EXP, causes 3 saves per hit, and for each of those saves that you fail, you lose a wound or structure. So explosive coupled with armor piercing is a fantastic way to take down heavy infantry and tags, purely because volume of saves. The more saves you make something with heavy armor make, the more likely it is to fail. It's that old chestnut. Paralysis or para ammunition is non-lethal. If you're hit with it, you make a physique -6, so your own physique -6 check. If you fail, you enter the immobilized A state, so you're kind of stuck to the spot. Shock ammunition. This stuff, if your target only has 1 Vita, so it only has 1 wound that it can take, and it fails a saving throw, it goes straight to dead. Now, normally, what happens is, if you have 1 Vita and you fail a save, you become unconscious. And when you're in the unconscious state, you can be revived by a doctor, by a paramedic. Some people have regeneration. Unless you're immune to shock ammunition, which some people are, shock will ignore that unconscious state. It'll take you straight to dead. You're out of the game. So it's a really good way of doing that sort of confirmed kill type thing. Smoke ammunition, like Eclipse, is something that doesn't target anyone or anything. You fire it in the ground and you make a nice big round template of smoke that's infinite height. The thing about smoke is if you have MSV, you can, to an extent, or in fact completely, see through it. So like with camouflage, MSV versus smoke is deadly, and there's some really fun tricks actually with using smoke in combination with MSV troopers to do some real damage to the enemy. So smoke is kind of the baby non-technical version. Eclipse is the blocks line of fire for absolutely everything. There is no option, it's done. Stun ammunition, it puts you into the stun state. Talk about that one in a second too. And then we have T2 ammunition. This fun stuff, every save that you fail takes off 2 Vita. So if you only have 1 Vita in the first place, it'll take you straight to dead. But if you say a tag with 3 structure points and you fail a save against a T2 shot, then you lose 2 of those structure instantly. It's just not pleasant. You'll find T2 predominantly in Ariadne, as that's where the material that it's made from. I want to say Tessium, but I'm probably wrong on that front. Anyway, T2, gotta love it. Those are the core ammo types that we deal with in Infinity. So let's talk about zero visibility zones. In fact, let's take a look at So, what is a zero visibility zone? It's an area which impacts visibility and so line of fire, usually caused by smoke or of some type. There are other causes of visibility zones, however, and there are other types of visibility zone. We're going to talk about zero visibility for the time being because that's the most important thing. Troopers may not draw a line of fire through that zone. So if you're trying to get your troopers up the board and your enemy's built this wall of ARO pieces, you chuck a big punch of smoke in front of it, nothing they can do, they can't shoot you. However, if you're on the other side of a big lump of smoke, zero visibility zone technically, and you are the target of a BS attack, either into, from, or through a zero vis zone, then any response except dodge gets a -6 mod. So if somebody dackers you from inside of smoke because they have multispectral visor, for example, and you shoot back, you get -6, plus any other mods that normally apply. So if they're camouflage or if they're in cover or anything like that, they can stack negative mods against you, up to a maximum of -12. With smoke, this mod is modified by MSV. You start getting up to MSV2, it ignores this -6 mod completely. With Eclipse, this -6 mod is not modified even by MSV. It just nopes, you can't see through it. End of. Template weapons, kaboom. We have 2 types of template weapons in the game. You may have seen the circular and the teardrop shaped ones. Direct weapons, the teardrop shaped ones, there's 2 different sizes of those, and impact templates are the round ones. Common examples of direct is your flamethrower and the zapper, and common examples of impact is your missile launcher and your rocket launcher. Direct templates, you place the template in base to base with the attacking trooper. Any enemy touched, note, not covered, touched by the template at any point in the order are hit. And this can be avoided by a successful dodge. So let's go back to the touched at any point. So if you are active phase and you're moving a fire team, let's say across an alleyway, the entrance to an alleyway, they start out of line of fire, they end out of line of fire, but at the end of that alleyway, unfortunately, there is a guy with a flamethrower. And as you move across, he flames. If all, let's say, 5 members of your fire team move across that gap, they will all 5 be hit by that flamethrower. That is what templates do. It's not pleasant, it's not fun, it is funny if you're using them. However, a dodge, a simple dodge, will avoid it. So, very, very potent, very, very useful. But as soon as somebody makes a dodge on a 1, you don't care, it's all done. They can make a dodge at any point, it's just done. So, that can be the downside of direct template weapons. Impact template weapons are fired like a normal weapon, so you pick your target, that is your point of impact, and you place your round template on that individual. Anything under that template is hit. So if there are other people of his side around him, they're all taking it. They're all taking it to the face, basically. He'll be the main target, but all arrows are independently face-to-face with the attacker. Let's talk about what that means. So we're going to do a couple of impact template examples. The first one's for everyone, the second one's for members. So let's run through this. We have an active phase Jasvasti Noctifier. He's doing a BS attack against a Fusilier. He's using a missile launcher on blast mode. So if you see here, we have blast mode at the top, which has explosive ammunition, and hit mode at the bottom, which has armor piercing and explosive. The blast mode has circular, impact template circular as a trait, while the hit mode doesn't. So if you're firing at a group of guys, then you're going to use the blast mode and put that circular template down. If you're firing at a heavily armoured trooper, then you are going to use the hit mode, because that has got armour piercing, so it's going to halve the armour of your target and do the explosive 3 saves. So we're going to use the blast mode, which gives us the impact template, but we don't get the AP. The template, as it goes down on the table, doesn't just cover the Fusilier we're targeting, there's 2 others underneath it as well. The Noctifier will roll 1 die for the BS attack due to a burst of 1, and all of the Fusiliers will dodge 1 die each, and they are individually compared to that Noctifier's roll. This means that if the Fusilier, who is the main target, succeeds in dodging, then because they're independent rolls, if the Noctifier is successful in its attack, even if the main target gets out of the way, the other 2 may still be hit. That is still a possibility. Right, and we're back with equipment. Even more stuff for your stuff-covered guys. There are many different toys in Infinity, and I'd recommend you go off and check them all out, because there's so much stuff. But don't check them all out at once. Check them out as and when you need them. Otherwise, you're just going to make your head hurt, and you don't want to do that. So visors, we've seen MSV already. Biometric is a type of MSV, except it sees through impersonation, which is an ability we've not talked about. X visors improve range bands. A 360 visor lets you see 360 degrees. That'll be important in a minute. Protection, nano screens gives you effective cover. Deployable cover lets you deploy a piece of cover. ECM is a anti-hacking protection. Albedo makes you harder to be seen by multispectral visor troopers, and Firewall also protects you from hacking. You get sneaky equipment like hollow masks, which let you disguise yourself as someone else. Hollow projector, which lets you put down copies of yourself on the board, then your opponent has to guess which one's the real one and shoot that, and if it's not, it just disappears. And then Bang Bong makes you a little bit sneakier at dodging out of the way of attacks. You get hacking kit like repeaters, deployable repeaters, and fast pandas, these are perimeter weapons, fast pandas. You put them down, they run out 8 inches, and then they become a hacking area extender. So we talked about repeaters in the previous video. Fast panda is a great example of one. 2 key bits of kit I want to talk about: the Gizmo kit and the Medikit. Gizmo kit. It is a shootable weapon, well, a shootable bit of equipment, or it can be used in base-to-base contact with a friendly unit who has structure and has gained a wound, actually not lost a wound technically. If you hit the target, it makes a pH test. If that is passed, it removes a wound or the unconscious state. If you fail the pH test, it gains another wound. So if it goes well, they stand up and everything's heckety, dickety, diggity, brilliant, awesome, everyone's happy. If they fail that pH test, then they can potentially get even worse. You may even kill them. Medikit is exactly the same as the Gizmo kit, but it applies to troopers with Vita, not with structure, and it can only be used if the person you're treating is unconscious. You can't give troopers back. They have 2 Vita to start with, and they've taken two wounds. You can't heal them back up to having 2 Vita. They can only be taken out of the unconscious state. If you do the Medikit, they fail the pH test, they go to the dead state. They're out of the game. So it is a gamble using a Medikit. It's much more reliable using a doctor, but in a pinch, and if you don't have the points, and if there happens to be a paramedic stood there and you want to stand that guy back up, give it a crack. You never know. Stranger things have been known to happen. And to be honest with you, Medikits are still a lot more effective at healing people than some doctors in Pano. Just saying. Line of fire. We've not talked about this before because it's one of those things that when you're learning the game, it's not worth worrying about. Most troopers can only see in the front 180-degree arc. So an arrow, they can only respond in that arc. If attacked outside of that arc and outside of zone of control, they may only respond if they survive. So if somebody shoots you in the back, you can only turn around if you don't die. Now when you're moving or in your marker state, you count as having a 360-degree arc, which is fine. This rule is why Infinity bases have the little plastic arrows on them and a line. So the line is for your 12 o'clock effectively, and then the 3 and the 9 are the arrows on the side. A lot of players, myself included, will colour the fire arc to remind yourself to keep an eye on that. So on the right here we have the Spectre. That is a front arc. The light grey is the direction he's looking. The black is where he can't see. So it is important to have that. It's important to use that in the game because certain skills and abilities like 360 visor are only useful because everyone else only gets 180. Let's get down to the choppy people. Close combat. When 2 enemies are in silhouette contact, they can poke each other. CC attack is a short skill and ARO. You may have used it already. Burst is, as standard, 1 in active and reactive. You only get 1 die to do this. Combat with multiple friendlies. If you and a bunch of friends are ganging up on an enemy, then you get +1 burst per friendly. Not everybody joins in. You activate 1 trooper, and the other troopers cheer him on so much that he gets extra punches in, basically. That's how it works. As you need to be in silhouette contact, the size of the target's base limits the number of troopers you can fit around it. You can get 4 troopers around a 25mm base, and 6 troopers around a 40mm base or larger. So that means that you can get 6 friends, stand around a tag who's on a 55mm base, and try and beat it to death. Only 1 person will do the beating. The other people will lend moral support, and for each of them they'll give a burst bonus. So that means if you do get those 6 around a 55mm base, for example, you'll get burst 6 close combat. The theory sound, I've seen 4 done. I've seen 4 done on a semi-regular basis. I've never seen 6. I've never wanted something dead enough that I've used 6, but it's an option. So allowing yourself to be ganged up on by multiple enemies in close combat, bad idea. Ganging up on on a single enemy in close combat, potentially good idea. CC is pretty much shooting, but you have to be in silhouette contact. So you don't get range modifiers or anything like that for CC because there's no range, pretty much, apart from one instance, which we'll talk about in a second. There's no range involved. It is just, I'm stood next to you, I stab you once, you stab me once, we find out what happens. It's done using the CC stat, and then your weapons, potential survival, all this kind of stuff is as standard. But there are many buffs for CC. Let's talk about success values for close combat. You will see that many troopers have a base CC stat above 20. Many CC abilities give buffs to CC. So when you have a CC stat that is 25 or 26 or 27, and you're rolling a d20, so your options are between 1 and 20, you're always hitting. What happens? The amount over 20 that the success value includes wraps crits around to the start of the roll. So, a CC attack with a success value of 25 would succeed on any roll. Any roll you put there is going to be a success. But you will crit on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 20. So 20 is always a crit, but then you add it onto the bottom. So if it's 27, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 20. This balances out untrained CC troopers getting a lucky shot and things like that. So it's good, it's unpleasant, it's fun. We're going to look at a success value example now with members. Right, let's look at martial arts, which makes what we just talked about even worse. They represent your special training and they buff your CC output and abilities. 5 levels. Level 1 gives a -3 mods to your enemy CC. Level 2 gives you +3, then -1. 3 is you +3, then -3, and you get a special die. 4, you +3, then -3, you +1 burst. And 5, you get all of it. So you get +3, they get -3, you get a special die, and you get +1 burst. So with a level 5 martial artist, you will be throwing 3 dice, getting rid of 1, and then potentially inflicting those 2 wounds. That's a distinct possibility. Again, for the members, let's look at the martial arts example. Right, let's have a look at other close combat skills which are available to you. We have Berserk. This is a long skill. You have to be able to see your target in line of fire, and then you get to move both of your movement values. So if you've got 6-4 movement, you get to move 10 inches and then smack them with a CC attack. However, because you can't pre-measure, if you declare Berserk and then you measure it and you can't reach it, then you idle and have to stand there looking a bit awkward with somebody who's in line of fire and was just about to get smacked in the face and is probably not happy with you. Yeah, but this Berserk skill is just a fantastic way of going zoom across the board and just smacking somebody with, you know, a close combat specialist. This can be a fantastic way just to delete somebody off the board. The fact you have to have line of fire first does make it a bit more complicated, but still awkward. Awesome even. Guard. Certain units have this ability, and this enables you to complete a CC attack on a target with line of fire and zone of control. This effectively gives you a 8-inch reach CC attack. Now, your enemy can still CC back because this tends to be completed by units who have like a robotic dog with them that they send out to do the attacking. So you are still vulnerable to counterpunch, but if you have a very good CC specialist and you can start attacking at 8 inches, outstanding. Got to love it. Natural Born Warrior ignores all negative mods in a face-to-face roll made in CC. So if you are coming up against somebody with martial arts who's starting to hand out those -3 mods to CC, you don't care. You're a Natural Born Warrior, baby. Protheon, you will pretty much only see this in Shazvasti, but it's worth talking about because it's filthy. For each successful wound inflicted in CC, the trooper with the Protheon skill either removes a wound or increases their Vita stat by 1. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Caliban. I think Sheskin has it as well. So you run up to somebody, you bite them in the face, and you gain a Vita, you gain an extra wound that you can lose. And you can do this up to twice. So with Sheskin, she can get up to Vita 3. Now, Sheskin is an absolute tank. She's a beast. She doesn't need this in any way, shape, or form. But if your opponent is dumb enough to let Sheskin get up close and personal and start munching on people, hello. Now, the great thing about this is that you can do a CC attack on somebody who is unconscious. So they're lying on the floor. They're not dead yet. They can't do anything. Coup de grace? Coup de grace? Coup de grace, isn't it? I know people say coup de grace, and it's not. It's coup de grace. My good friend Rudy corrected me on this many times, and every time I see him, I kind of want to ask again, but I never do. But you can just basically curb stomp them to finish them off. But with Protheon, you can use that opportunity to go nom and gain yourself that extra Vita. It's not friendly. It is big. It is clever. It is also fun. Because there's nothing worse than not only shooting your opponent's troopers, and dropping them, but then eating them for dinner afterwards. I don't know why you wouldn't. Glorious. So let's look at orders. There are so many flavors of order. We have regular. These are the ones you've been using so much. So throughout all of your experience, you can share them amongst troopers in the combat group. Irregular. These are generated by a trooper and are only usable by that trooper, and they're not shared with the combat group in any way, shape or form. So irregular, yeah, it's my order. I'm doing what I want with it. There are certain really cheap troopers who have this because they're really, really cheap. So there's no way they're contributing a regular order. So irregular can have its benefits. It can have certain uses. And we talked in the last video about using command tokens to convert irregular order into regular orders. You can take a trooper who has an irregular order, spend a command token, turn his irregular order regular, and add that to your combat group. So you can convert them, but you'll burn through those command tokens, as we spoke about before. Then we have your special lieutenant order. It's always called a special lieutenant order, unless you're actually playing, in which case it's just your lieutenant order. Anyway, these are generated by your lieutenant, and they are not added to the order pool, and they are only usable by the lieutenant. Ish. That's not entirely true. We'll cover that one in a second. So, then we get to the Impetuous phase, the Eager Beavers. These are your slathering lunatics. This is a special phase that happens after the order count at the start of your turn. Troopers with the Impetuous special skill may activate without spending an order, and they can then effectively do an order's worth of stuff. They're completely nuts, way too enthusiastic. They can go charging off down the board. So you can do a move CC attack, a move BS attack, a move dodge, move plus idle, move plus move, jump, climb, berserk, skill with airborne deployment label, or those skills that specifically say they can be used during the Impetuous phase. These is a great way of zooming yourself down the board. But this is a may. So if your trooper has Impetuous as a special skill, they may activate during the Impetuous phase. They don't have to. Typically, Impetuous comes with some other disadvantages, like you don't get cover, stuff like that. So you may not just want to send these guys charging down the field because they can't just go where you want. You don't have full control. They're a little bit bonkers. So Impetuous phase activations need to be used with care, because all moves must be the full movement value of the trooper. You can't, if you've got a first move value of 6, you can't go 4 and not go around the corner because they're going to shoot me. You've got to go the full 6. And in this order, you must either move towards an enemy attempting to get into silhouette contact with them, move towards the enemy deployment zone, or idle if you can't get close to the enemy deployment zone. So if you're sat in the enemy deployment zone, you can then idle. So first you have to try and get close to an enemy. If you can't do that, then you have to move towards the enemy deployment zone, or you have to idle. So you're very limited in what you can do. And I tend to see a lot of players will use their Impetuous phase in turn 1 and then very rarely thereafter, unless they have something that they can do very, very safely. It's a nice burst. It's a nice burst of energy to move yourself forward, but it also comes with risk because you can't just go, I'm going to go over here and cover. They're nuts. They're going to go where they want to. So Impetuous phase is a lot of fun. Right, lieutenants, the bossy bullet magnets. How we love these lads. What are they? They are the leader of your force. Their main use in game is the initiative roll off at the start of the game. That's the main point at which you're going to use them. They generate their own special order or orders, and they're a big risk. Why are they a risk? Well, if your lieutenant is dead, unconscious, or isolated at the start of your turn, you enter the loss of lieutenant state. All of your orders, all of your beautiful regular orders throughout your entire army, your entire force, become irregular. And as we saw a minute ago, irregular orders can only be spent on the trooper who generated them. This is not good. You have a turn where you can only move and shoot one guy once. And if you have a fire team and they become irregular and you spend any of those orders, then that fire team breaks. The fire team stops being there. Also not good. So what happens? You nominate a new lieutenant in secret, and at the start of your next turn, everybody's back to regular orders, assuming you didn't lose your lieutenant in the next turn. You can lose your lieutenant again as soon as you've nominated them. If they die, you're in loss of lieutenant at the start of your next turn. Loss of lieutenant can, at the wrong moment, cost you the game. You have a plan, you have your mission, you have these things you need to do, and suddenly everybody can only do one thing. This is potentially catastrophic for even the best laid plans. So looking after or being mindful of your lieutenant is important. Now there are also skills around your lieutenant. Chain of command is the first one. This automatically, the unit trooper with chain of command automatically takes over as lieutenant if loss of lieutenant occurs. So we can shrug off loss of lieutenant. This is really, really useful. They remain the lieutenant for the rest of the game. Even if you stand your lieutenant back up, they remain the lieutenant. And in most missions, chain of command troopers are specialists, which is kind of cool. NCO. This trooper may use the special lieutenant order on itself as if it were a regular order. This is really, 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 really cool, because you don't want people to know who your lieutenant is, because they're going to assassinate it. This is not good. So lieutenant and NCO trooper do not need to be in the same combat group. The NCO trooper can just go, hoik, I'm going to take that lieutenant order, turn it into regular order, and use it on myself. And if they're in the fire team, as long as they're the fire team leader, you can spend your lieutenant order on an NCO in a fire team to activate the fire team. So it's effectively a bonus regular order for your whole force right there. Right, Strategos 1 and 2. Strategos 1, it changes LT orders to regular orders, which is really, really powerful. It's like NCO, but for your whole force. As long as your lieutenant, who will be the one with Strategos, is alive, your lieutenant orders become regular. And during deployment, we'll cover this in the next video, but normally you deploy all of your force apart from one. Your enemy deploys all of their force apart from one. You put your last trooper down, they put their last trooper down. With Strategos level 1, you can hold back 2 troopers in deployment, which is kind of nice, because the enemy doesn't get to find out what's coming their way until the very last moment. Strategos level 2 does exactly what level 1 does, and the player may move troopers between combat groups without spending a command token. This is incredibly powerful. We talked before about the fact that your combat groups, as I run it frequently, I have my main combat group that does the work, and then we have a secondary combat group who is there to move people across from into the primary combat group as people in the primary combat group die, because I always want to have as close to 10 orders in my primary combat group as possible. But having only 4 command tokens limits the number of times I can do that. Strategos level 2 takes that out of the equation. You can just move your troops around willy-nilly, no problems whatsoever. Start of your turn, I'm going to move these 5 guys from here over there, no problems. Now, let's talk about types of lieutenant. We have the victim. The victim is cheap, weak, and easily squished. They will normally spend the entire game hiding behind a box on a building, on its belly, out of the way. Please don't shoot me, dear God, no, leave me alone. That is what your victim is. They are cheap, so you can ignore them, and their whole purpose is to not let you get into loss of lieutenant. Then we have the tank. The tank is a big gun with a bad attitude, and you get some units like a Marut in Aleph, who has that Strategos level 2 that we just spoke about, but only if she is your lieutenant. So it's a real heavy hitting unit, and also your lieutenant, which is the biggest bullet magnet ever. If you have any sense, if you're running a tank lieutenant, you will normally have a chain of command on his belly, on top of a building, out of the way somewhere, so that when your lieutenant invariably goes pop, after a brilliant bout of violence and destruction, you're not loss of lieutenant. Utility. These bring useful features and options and buffs and support features and stuff like that to the game. They are there to amplify what's going on with your list. They are very, very useful guys. Then we have the sneak. He hides or disguises itself so it doesn't die. They tend to be very squishy. They tend to die quite easily if the enemy can even find it, which if it's disguised as something else, they're not going to do. Now it's worth saying, much as these are very defined types, there is a lot of overlap, and there is a lot of overlap. You'll find that some tanks also have great utility, some sneaks also have great utility. There are different combinations, but those are the 4 main types. Getting to know which one you're happiest with and how to use it is really, really important to not ending up in loss of lieutenant. Also getting the maximum value out of the points you invest in your troopers. Channel members, patrons, I have some examples for you of those different types. Let's have a look at our different flavours of lieutenant. And states. There are 23 states in Infinity N5. A lot of them are bad news, some of them are not. Some can be fixed, others cannot. We're not going to do all of them. I'm going to give you a flavour of the type of things you'll see in states and an idea of what they mean, and hopefully that will give you the ability to go and look up and read more states for yourself. So the good news, we have the normal state, which is everything is fine and carry on. Normally, your normal troopers are normally normal. That is when nothing's happened. They do not have a wound, they do not have an unconscious, they are fine. Suppressive fire is also a state. So a trooper with a weapons, or even a weapon, with the suppressive fire skill can spend a whole order to go into this state. Sorry, they have to have the suppressive fire trait on the weapon. So it's the weapon that has the suppressive fire trait. You spend a whole order, you go into this state. And instead of using your normal profile in ARO, you use the profile that you see on screen here. So 0 range modifier from 0 to 16 and -3 from 16 to 24. Potential of survival remains the same as the weapon. The saving roll attribute remains the same and the number of saving rolls remains the same as your weapon, but your burst is now 3. So you're throwing 3 dice in ARO. There are a lot of weapons that can go on suppressive fire. If you are in a position where you have an area that you need to lock down, sticking troopers on suppressive fire is a great way forward, because in addition to all of this, enemies shooting at a trooper with suppressive fire get a -3 modifier because you guys just go nuts and ripping off so much fire. So they're getting 3 dice back, they get -3 to hit. You should be in cover if you're setting this particular shenanigan up, so you're potentially at -6. Suppressive fire is a great way to sort of exert board control. If you have the orders, or you can do a coordinated order and put multiple guys in suppressive fire at once. Just bear that one in mind. The bad news, unloaded state. Weapons with a disposable trait can run out of ammo. This is what happens when they do. So that is things like mines, that is things like pitchers, which fire out repeaters, that is things like Panzerfaust. They can run out of ammunition. If they do, they become unloaded. If you can then get in zone of control of a trooper with baggage, then you can reload your weapon. Do you want to? I'll leave that up to you. Stunned. When you are stunned, you cannot declare attacks. So this was like the stun ammunition we talked about before. All rolls, apart from saving rolls, get a -3 mod, and it can be cancelled by a doctor or engineer, depending on whether you have Vita or structure on the trooper that's impacted. So if you've got a tag with structure, then an engineer needs to fix it. If you've got a normal trooper with Vita, then a doctor needs to fix it. Or it will cancel at the end of the states phase, sorry, the start of your states phase at the end of your turn. So your trooper gets blinded, effectively they get stunned. At the end of your turn, they will stop being stunned. So it's not permanent, it's not that scary, it's just unpleasant. And it's a good way if somebody is attacking you and you have something with like a flash pulse. It's a particular piece of equipment that forward observers have frequently. You can just stun them and stop them from being able to do the shooty anymore. Now we've got the dire news. We've got unconscious. When a trooper takes wounds up to the vital SDR value, they enter the unconscious state. The trooper becomes prone, they don't generate orders, they are out of the game for all intents and purposes. When it comes to the end of the game, anything that is unconscious is counted as a casualty. So they're done. But you can cancel that unconscious state by using a doctor or engineer for the Vita or STR stat, depending on which you're doing. So doctor will heal up a Vita stat, and engineer will heal up a structure stat. Immobilized A. You cannot declare any other skill than dodge when you are immobilized A, and your dodge is completed at a -6 mod. So effectively you're glued to the floor. That's the common thing that this is done with adhesive launchers and stuff like that. They just literally glue you to the floor and you've got to extract yourself from the mess of pudding and yuck that they've glued you down with. You can also get an engineer to cancel the state. So you get into base to base with the person that's glued to the floor, complete a whip check, unglue them and away you go. Or you can complete that dodge at -6. This is painful. It's very painful. Immobilized B is more electronic, so you can't declare any other skill than reset. Reset is completed at -3, and it can be cancelled by an engineer or by completing that reset at -3. Immobilized really messes you up, because if you're in immobilized B and you're locked in your armour and somebody shoots you, reset is not a counter to that, so they're getting the free shots on you. You just got to try and clear that issue, and hopefully you don't die in the process. So mobilised A and mobilised B, not fun. The worst news, the dead state. When a trooper is unconscious and receives one more wound, they become dead. They are removed from the board. They are, well, they're dead. That's kind of it. Then we have the retreat state. When you have less than 25% of your army left on the board, you count as a loss of lieutenant, and your troops can basically only run away. Troops will move to their deployment zone, then run off the edge. Basically, they will leave the party. Some missions don't use this rule, and some special skills like Warhorse and Courage ignore it. And you can spend command tokens to cancel it on a trooper. But again, command tokens are not that common. They are quite rare. So are you ever going to have enough to keep your troops on the board? Probably not. So that is everything that we've learned in episode 9. We've gone through all of that good stuff. There was quite a lot. There are areas, as we talked about, of states and gear that we haven't talked about, but you should now be equipped to go and research yourself that in the book. If you have questions, ping them across. Members, hit me up on the Discord. If you have specific questions and queries, we'll run through them, we'll get those answered for you. But predominantly that is the core of everything learned. From here, we're going to do starting a game, deployment, infiltration, and deployment skills. Having a vision for your turn. That is the next video. After that video, we are on to hints and tips, and then we're on to what's next. And that's the end of this series. So we're nearly there, guys. Hang in. Nearly done. Do not forget, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this. Any questions in the comments below, and I will see you all again soon. Thanks a lot, and goodbye.